Xander, are we back up?
I'm out.
Okay, we're up, Rudy.
Muted.
Okay.
We're back. Go ahead and ask your question, Rudy.
So, Jace, I have several, simple concerns and questions, and I just wanted, your feedback, and I wanted you to tell me, what you plan to do with these things. They may sound tedious, but it can mean the difference between, in my eyes, of cheating and, of course, doing something legit.
Go ahead.
Now, my first thing is, there's something I discovered years ago, and I mentioned this on my show. I was the first one to discover it. I know I was, because every time I brought it up to somebody, they were like, what does that mean?
Level are you going to sort of try to hold the line? Now, I'm not going to try to dictate what that level is. I think that you expressing and explaining some of these things, alerting people to how easy some of these things are, I think will help educate people and keep their eyes open at looking at some of this stuff. But ultimately, whenever you get away from, the second you step away from a classic arcade machine, which even that can be manipulated if you want to spend enough money and time, you can do it.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
On some level, we want to have fun and not turn it into, a science project.
Right.
I think the line that you draw on this stuff is where it ceases to become fun and it becomes arduous or just something you're not looking forward to. And that is going to be different, I think, for different adjudicators. And I also think that you're going to start to see different adjudicating type mentalities depending on what they're looking at. I think like the classic arcade community is going to look at things. They already look at things like ridiculously hard, and I think they're going to continue to look at things really hard. The Nintendo, like the classic consoles, it has not been really determined how hard that community wants to press on itself for those kinds of things that you're mentioning, Rudy, because it's never been given a chance to even form as a community about this sort of thing. It's always been just a referee at Twin Galaxies or someone, you know. So I don't know, Rudy. I don't know.
Just try to understand my view. After being not the only person, obviously, but the most of all. Being scammed so many times and cheated, and knowing that I was and can prove it. It's hard to sit here and say, how's this community going to decide? When I've been through it and I've seen the stuff that goes on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you've only seen a small part. You have not. The total number of people that you've had to interact with in this quote-unquote scene of score chasing has been very limited because of the scope of Twin Galaxies' reach in general. You're going to see a dynamic change because of the much larger amount of people that are coming in deal with this, particularly the age groups that come in will be closer to yours and even younger, and so they'll be more console oriented than, say, arcade system oriented, and they're going to sort of carry those concerns. So I understand what you're saying when you're looking at the past and you're having your concerns, but I'm also saying is that if you use just the past as your only measurement tool to anticipate the future, your targeting might be way off in terms of how severe an issue is going to be in dealing with it. I do
12
not.
years.
Yeah, but it's always been the same people in the same size over those 12 years. It's not really.
Well,
it's not really
different ownerships. There's been different ownerships.
Yeah, but it's the same process, right? It hasn't
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. It's going to be very different because adjudication is now out in the open. It's just out in the open. If you see something come down, well, think of it this way: you're an expert at looking at those sorts of things. If you come across an adjudication on a title, and you can identify something, you're going to be able to say, "Hey, I'm identifying this as an issue." And everybody's going to go, what? And then you can simply explain. And even in your response to the adjudication, you can post a link to a video of yourself explaining, here's how I can duplicate what you're seeing here.
Now I have a double question, so it doesn't take as much time. Here's a double question. Now, years ago, I'm sure you know the story. When I did a really fast Jaws game with my fingers, and I had to go to New York City to prove that I was not using a turbo controller because that's how fast my fingers were. Now, make a long story short, I had to go do that live. Now, say somebody submits a score that somebody's in their prime like I was, 10 years ago, and they do something like as fast as I did, but they don't want to show their hands now on camcorder, and they do something that's so fast, and I show the evidence and everything, wouldn't it just be easier to make a recommendation or make a setting where it should be, okay, if you're not going to do just live, at least put a camcorder on your hands and around the system and the cartridge. And then with that, what are you going to do about grandfathered scores and scores that we can prove that have been cheated to get to achieve?
Well, okay, here are 2 quick answers. Picture a submission that's come in, and it has that very specific issue. So you're looking, you're like, I can't see your hands, and that shit's going super fast. Now, the guy says, well, I don't want to, show my hands, or I forgot to film my hands, or whatever. You could say, right there in the thread of adjudication, well, dude, I'm just going to lean towards this being some fakery, unless you can show me your hands doing this. So the person who submitted can actually comment underneath that and show you a video of their hands doing it. So you can go, oh, okay, I believe it, or you can go, that's more fakery or whatever. But at least a dialogue can take place now in an adjudication where the person who's being suspected can answer to it, can say, oh, no, here's this is what I mean. Because most people who are submitting, they're trying to be honest. Most people are trying to prove this stuff. So.
Right. But there's still obviously a high amount of people that are not. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not thousands that are being honest, but there's still a good.
Well, there's always going to be
people that are going to be dishonest.
Well, that's true, and as they get caught, they will be banned. But in the meanwhile, there at least can be a dialogue. There can be an opportunity for them to continue to demonstrate and prove that what they're doing is legit, and you'll be able to see that, and it all is literally recorded as a permanent record that's tied to the score if it makes it in. So now the answer to your second question is, what about grandfather scores or questionable scores? I answered earlier on in the stream.
If you wouldn't mind answering it again, I'd appreciate it.
No problem. It's very simple. Just like scores going into the database where there is evidence, there has to be evidence. Scores coming out have to have evidence that demand that it comes out.
Okay.
Fair enough. That's it. So simply saying that it's questionable is not enough. Prove it. And if you can,
gotta prove it.
If you can, it'll come out.
That'll actually be pretty fun to do to expose somebody the right way, showing that they cheated. That'd actually be fun to do. I like that idea. So in other words, you'll have an area where we can play the game and show you what they did to get that score. And
you will be able to call a score into question, provide an evidence package as to why it's not valid, proving it, and then everybody's going to gather around and either agree or not agree. And if they do agree, and the whole result says, yes, this score needs to come out, that will land on my desk. I will do a final review of all of the materials, and if I see that the whole thing is a legitimate thing, it's coming out, because I don't want bad scores in the database, period.
Right. Like if you see it, like a game that somebody tiptoes to get a higher score, basically, like plays slow, quick, just purposely, just prances along, not moves,
Yeah.
Just like taps the controller so it adds more time for characters to respawn. We had this conversation before, but you know what I'm talking about.
I don't want bad scores in the database. Who's got his hand up? Chester, what's up?
Not much. So, for example, is your high score on Zookeeper going to be submitted?
No, it can't be.
Okay,
Nope, can't be
thank
submitted.
you.
Real quick for some of the people in our chat, is Kurt Sutter coming on?
Kurt Sutter's going to come on, yes. No,
Okay,
he's
so-
not? He's not? Okay, he's not. Okay, so how much time do I have left?
Yeah, so that's what we're kind of antsy over here.
Okay. All right, we're
used to our time limit, so we're kind of freaking out.
For those of you who don't know, we are not actually at the Twin Galaxies studio.
We are not, no. So.
Yeah, okay, we're good apparently till 8 o'clock, apparently.
I was going to play.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
You keep going. When you're done, I'll hop on.
Okay, yeah, we're good. I want all these questions answered. Oh, and by the way,
keep them coming.
come here for a second.
Grandfathers.
Come down here. This is David Tashrudian. He's our Twin Galaxies lawyer.
Hey, how you doing? I feel sorry for you.
It's a great job, believe me.
What's up?
It's a
Oh
job
man.
security.
Yeah, so
Yeah, he's got a job.
so rest assured that Twin Galaxies is quite serious. So
Man, he's
more
watching this.
questions. Oh yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes.
If I recall, a couple weeks ago on the Gauntlet Arena, there was like a record-setting run in one of the dungeons. Would that be submitted? Because if I recall, playing with them were a couple Twin Galaxies employees.
Okay, so there's two things. Let me answer that. The people who work at Twin Galaxies Live don't have anything to do with TwinGalaxies.com scorekeeping or anything else. Twin Galaxies Live is basically a live television network like G4, and they are not related at all in terms of adjudication or the website or any sort of authority whatsoever. So just know that. Number two, the Gauntlet record was a record established within Gauntlet itself. It keeps track of its own things. It's not a Twin Galaxies record. Now, if the people who did that record were Twin Galaxies people, they can't, even if they're on Twin Galaxies Live, they can't send in a record. So that's out. But inside of Gauntlet, it keeps its own world record thing. It has nothing to do with Twin Galaxies, though.
Very neat.
So
So
what?
me and Nick
question.
can play,
So
right?
me and Mike can play?
Yeah. Yes, you guys can.
Oh,
So what's a
get excluded.
I know.
what's a TG lawyer do?
Well,
Oh man.
there's all kinds of things. Like,
don't-
here, do you want me to tell you?
Loaded question.
He gives me things like this, which is, this is from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So I'm opening this, and let's see what it says. It says, oh, look at that. See if I can hold this up. You see that? That is called
I do.
the official Twin Galaxies trademark has been backdated correctly. So let me simply here's like just one of the many things that is involved. As you know, Twin Galaxies ownership bounced all around, and the legal for it has bounced all around, and certain things lapse, and certain things change, and then it goes from incorporated, and there's international, and there's LLC. Well, all the trademark stuff starts flying around in all of that. So, of course, what I'm trying to do is bring order from front to back in Twin Galaxies, and Tash, as I call him, because his last name is Tashrudian, has managed to track down and figure out the entire trademark process. And so now the Twin Galaxies trademark of today correctly backdates its entire chain of ownership and command all the way back to November 10th, 1981.
Holy.
And it's got, this is from the government, the official seal and everything. So,
He deserves a round of applause.
yeah, so yeah, there you go. Tashrudian.
Yes.
So, there's all other kinds of things that he's, like for instance, there's that Twin Galaxies book that's out there, or the pinball
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah, that's still being sold. Yeah, except, where does that money go? Who has that? Where are the rights to that? Where are they, like,
I guess we need to talk, Chase.
it's all over the place.
There's a DVD out there too.
There's a
I was
DVD.
gonna say.
Yeah, so I'm trying, like, the one thing I hope you get from this broadcast is that gone are the days of confusion and sort of a clear. See, Walter always had a very clear vision of the potential of what Twin Galaxies is, and that hasn't changed. I agree with Walter completely on the player recognition and the achievement that everybody is accomplishing, and it needs to be held up, and everybody needs to be recognized. And there's all this opportunity for events and for follow-up, and that's what Walter really spoke to, and that's where his passion lies. It didn't really lie in chasing down a trademark. So, the core of what Twin Galaxies is, as started in 1981, is well preserved. I'm in complete agreement with it. I am just trying to set up a very, very organized structure that everybody understands. It doesn't have any secrets inside of it or weird machinations, that everybody can buy into, participate in, and benefit from collectively. And it can grow. And I'm going to make sure everybody is treated fairly, equally, and the same in this system. That's what I'm trying to do, the structure. So, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just kind of want to help Carrie out here in the chat.
Yeah.
I guess the question I think we need to ask first before we ask her question, you talked about this earlier about how Guinness does a specific type of world records, like you said, balancing Xbox DVDs on your head. She's talking about marathon world records. Now, I think she's talking about marathon world records as terms of time, like how long somebody can play a game, maybe not how long somebody can achieve a certain score, but just how long can somebody just keep playing the game. Is that something Twin Galaxies is going to track, or is that something that you know of that's going to kind of state a Guinness thing? For example, I saw somebody play, they just had a marathon of somebody playing Call of Duty. Doesn't mean they played it good or well. They probably lost a lot, but they played it for 86 hours straight. I think that's where Carrie's asking, is that something where Twin Galaxies is going to become a part of that? Or is that something like a Guinness thing they're going to keep track of that kind of stuff?
All right, so listen. Guinness's involvement is theoretical, okay? So let's just establish that I have not stated yet that it's a guaranteed thing. But in theory, if we were working together, there are things that are distinctly Guinness, and there are things that are distinctly Twin Galaxies when it comes to video game. Now generally, Twin Galaxies is oriented towards scores and hard scientific statistical measurements of video game performance, and not necessarily focused on the human extremes. Now, you get an interesting cross-section when you start talking about marathons, marathon gameplay. Twin Galaxies has historically tied a score to the marathon gameplay. Like the marathon itself is a side effect of the fact that someone's going for 100 million points on Missile Command. It's still point-oriented. What I can say is, if Twin Galaxies and Guinness were to work together, we would have discussed events that are Guinness-focused on Guinness-type records, but Twin Galaxies is still there to help and participate and create player appreciation as well. That would occur, theoretically. And vice versa, where there might be something that, well, theoretically, anytime you're setting a score in Twin Galaxies, it would theoretically be a Guinness World Record already. So their participation coming the other direction would theoretically already be present.
I think that answers the question.
So is this for every game that's ever made?
What for every game that's ever made?
Like your judification.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So for every single game in existence.
Every single game in existence that we build a track for, right? So is there enough interest to build a track for a particular game? But I want to include mobile games like iPhone, iPad, Android games, as well as handheld. There's no reason why we can't adjudicate and have those players participate in the community. They will be different. A mobile phone submission will not be as extensive as in our classic arcade. It can't be because of the nature of what they're playing on. So all you can do is, what's the best evidence package you can provide given the context of what you have to do to play it and be on it, and then the community can judge on that. So, but I think it will find its place. Its expectations. We will find for things like classic consoles, how to deal with those issues. The community is going to center in on what works for all the different platforms, and it will be different. The judging will be different on them, and your expertise as an adjudicator will grow because of that. Your knowledge in video games will grow because of that. You might play classics all the time, but Rudy showing you that holding down the reset button is expanding your knowledge in general of all of gaming, and he might go to adjudicate on a classic arcade where he's like, well, I didn't know that there's 3 different ROM sets for Zookeeper, and that ROM revision 2 actually the jump is shorter or something like that, right? So, so cumulatively, as a community, we will all get more epic, and I want people who are involved with the Twin Galaxies community to understand that they are at the top of the food chain when it comes to taking gameplay seriously, taking adjudication seriously, and their submissions seriously. This is the top of the food chain. I don't care how serious of a League of Legends player you are. That's great. That's a subcategory of esports underneath Twin Galaxies, which is all esports.
I guess kind of goes for adjudication. What about, we'll say, questionable rules or tracks on old games? I'm assuming this will be in the future, but like you talked about, Twin Galaxies will be setting up new tracks.
Right.
Will Twin Galaxies go back and maybe correct some tracks?
No.
Or
no.
do some clarifications on rules?
It will, if in extreme cases, it will have to create a new track next to the one that people feel has something in it that's not right. But you
or
have
something missing.
You have a bunch of scores already set against a particular track. So to go in and change the track would effectively invalidate those scores because they did not occur under the same conditions. So you can't just simply tweak the rules of a track. If it's a big enough deal, then what you have to do is you have to create another track that addresses the issue specifically, and people can submit against that.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to use my own personal experience. I'm looking at one thing right now, and there's just one score for all these tracks. It's a racing game, and I've played the game enough, and the track is there, but it's on 2 separate settings. But under the rules, there is no... under the rule system currently, that doesn't say what mode it's on. It's called Big Thrash mode and Arcade mode. Now, they both have the same type of tracks. Well, there's no way for me to know what that guy played on. So what you're saying is, for that type of specific case, a new track would be recorded saying, this is the rules with arcade, and we just leave the other one alone. Actually,
yes.
In that case, would be a good reason to grandfather a specific rule set. Okay, that makes sense.
What was that?
Who on Skype is dragging things around?
That's
Not
what
me,
it sounds like.
but I do have a question.
Yes.
Yes, Jace. Again, this might be something I kind of asked, but I don't think I did. On the grandfathering, will that be the same as me going back proving somebody cheated a score where I would prove it, or are grandfathering are those rules going to be different, like ungrandfathering old scores?
New Twin Galaxies today looks at things in a very binary fashion. If a score in the database is not legitimate and it can be proven, it's out. I don't care whether it's grandfathered one way or the other. It doesn't make any difference. If it's not a real score, it has to come out if it can be proven that that score is not valid. Period.
No, I'm talking about, though, if something's been grandfathered and it was valid, what are we going to do about that? That was my question.
Well,
like Jaws, for instance. I proved that it never should have been grandfathered.
Okay, you need to explain that more, because either a score is a legitimate score and it was achieved according to the rules at the time, or it was not.
I'll kind of clarify. I think I know what Rudy's talking about.
Go ahead.
I score at one. Are things in the future going to be what's called ungrandfathered? Start accepting scores for example, in the past, Twin Galaxies stopped accepting scores on specific tracks because it was kind of like a leeching method where you would just keep pushing and pushing to get points. Rudy did it with Jaws when you guys broadcasted it, that you could push the game further and get more points going by those original rules. It was closed off for a reason, not because there's a glitch in the game or something. It was just, I don't know what the reason was. Somebody could push it further, but for some reason, on some of them, they're closed.
You're talking about this more subjective idea called spirit of the game that Twin Galaxies applied in the past on tracks.
Yeah, because it was a score-based game and fastest completion.
Okay.
And what happened was, instead of them actually, checking the game like they should have, they just went over everybody else's head as adjudicators, and they closed the score without being able to prove that it couldn't go any further. They made it like the game would go on forever. As you can see, when I did the 25 hours, I proved that the game could roll, and it becomes almost impossible to beat after the roll because of the changes.
Let me just give you a straight and clear answer on this, okay?
Okay.
I would not have done that.
Of course, you may or may not answer it. Do we have an anticipation, or do we have a date by chance when we're ready to go?
Well,
no.
I can tell you what I am shooting for.
Okay.
Cool, that works.
But I can't guarantee it. But I can tell you what I'm shooting for.
Ian likes to guarantee, so I totally understand you.
Okay. January 1st.
Oh.
Okay.
Nice.
Is when the system should come online. Now, what will prevent that from happening is errors. Right now, the entire system is finished, and every night I'm up all night with the team, and we're testing it. I'm trying to cheat it. I'm seeing, making sure all the variation in submissions cannot be predicted, because every submission is unique in terms of how much voter weight it's going to take to push it, how long the adjudication is going to stay open, all these things that you cannot predict or keep track of, so the system can't be manipulated. I'm trying my hardest to manipulate the system. And so I'm literally doing that every night, and I plan on doing that for the next 30 days with the team. And if I can break it or cause bugs or whatever, and there's all this other stuff that you'll never see, but it relates to administrative programming, in order to identify certain methods of manipulation. I need to be able to see this, I need to see that, I need this on the admin side, there's all this stuff. So if I can't get through it all, then it will be more delayed, but my goal is for it to come on with just the basic stuff. The other thing is I have to go through the whole database and block score submissions for all the areas that are currently... I basically am trying to take Twin Galaxies. The moment it stopped, it didn't take certain scores on certain tracks. Our system right now has all those tracks open. I have to go through and block all the ones that were officially blocked back in the day, and then we'll address each particular one that needs to be unblocked on a case-by-case basis. So there's all that work that has to take place. But
it does. Like I said, I can't imagine it. Not an easy task at all. And by the way, I think many of us in the gaming community thank you. As Walter Day would say, you are one of the saints of the video game community.
Oh, I'm not that. Is that Stahl? Is that Stahl in the...
That's the one and only.
Look at that.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
How's it going, mate? Yeah, good on ya.
Good morning to you.
And good morning to you.
So, my goal in getting up here in front of everybody and just opening up to any question is to help people understand what is being accomplished, what the goal is. I've stayed out of the public light of Twin Galaxies for a very specific reason. I didn't want to come into this scene talking a bunch of stuff and not delivering anything, which is, to me, like the worst thing you can do. So I've not gone to events. I didn't go to the CGE, and I don't go to all these different events, because if I don't have answers and I don't have things to actually provide, I should just keep my stupid mouth shut. So that's why I got the site up. I restored all the messages. I restored the accounts. I'm trying to do all these things first before saying anything or making any kind of promise or anything like that. So I'm sorry if I've kept, previously, their Twin Galaxies leadership always sort of got out in front of everything. And then the follow-up was much harder, right? Like,
yeah, you know how many things we announced that never came true.
That was
drove
like
us
what our show was
crazy.
about, basically.
yeah. So I don't want to do that. And Twin Galaxies is not all about me. It's not a pyramid to me. I'm not interested in being the high point or the Walter is always going to be like the Godfather and symbolically, because his vision is his vision. I'm just trying to fulfill that promise. I'm not going to ever try to take the stage in that way. I want the players in the community to take the stage and to have those opportunities. I'm already well known and I already do things. So it's not about me trying to be famous or me trying to get attention. I don't care if I get attention or not. I really want the players to have attention, and I want fun put back into chasing scores. It is the funnest thing to do, is to compete with each other and to chase scores and to kind of recognize how cool, how good our gameplay is. That's what I'm trying to do. So I hope that makes sense.
Jace,
I
you
hear
should
Major feedback coming in.
you should try the NES Archon, see if you could do it perfect, and then do it faster than I did it. If you could do that, then you're a better Archon player than me. So that's your challenge.
To me, head-to-head Archon is always the most fun.
I know, but we can't do that until you invite me down to the studio, and so.
The thing about Nintendo is that gamepad. It's like, on the Commodore it uses a joystick, right? And the Nintendo is a gamepad.
I did it for 22 hours with one thumb. Come on now.
Yeah, but those diagonals in Archon, diagonal shots are like the money makers. And it's like on a gamepad, those diagonals.
Get an NES advantage.
Yeah, I know, but then it's just not. You want to keep it.
Controller. As long as I know the turbo's turned off, I don't care.
Yeah, turbo's not going to help you on Archon.
No, it won't. That's true.
I wish it would, but it won't.
Take
Play Zookeeper, bro.
Right. Look at that wallpaper.
Yeah, you love it?
Yeah,
I made it myself.
It looks good. It looks good.
It's just been a general question about the.
Okay, so until the head-to-head Archon, then just see if you can do the perfect, just for the heck of it. You should try it.
Filt80 says that the C64 version is the best anyway.
I've never played it, so I can't say. I'm not going to lie like other people say. Oh, I've played that.
You're a young man, so you were after the Commodore 64, but you got the Nintendo.
No, I had 64 for a short time. I just never had that game.
Well, that just put a tear in my eye.
Yeah, I played Paradox Street.
So, are there any? When is the next big event? I need to escape the cold. Data God, I have felt much safer with you in Antarctica. So I think you should stay there. Are there any other questions? Anything?
I have a question about the system you're putting in place. As I understand what you've been saying, it's just the adjudication system, so Twin Galaxies will only be responsible for putting the system in place, whereas the community will have almost the entire say about whose records count for what. Is that correct?
That is simplified, yes. But the way that the community is having its say is a very, very controlled scenario that is designed to mitigate collusion, and it's designed to individually motivate each adjudicating member to serve themselves by answering and adjudicating correctly, and to not have a vested interest into a group dynamic of adjudication.
Right, that's what I meant by the system you're putting in place. But right. I guess I was asking, like, Twin Galaxies can't just come in and say, oh, the community's agreed on this, but, we're going to poo-poo this. We're going to be faithless electors, if you will.
Nope, I'm not. That's not going to happen. Now, here's another interesting thing when it comes to live adjudications. So you're having an event and you want a Twin Galaxies referee there so you can adjudicate live. All that a Twin Galaxies representative could do in a theoretical is say that they were there as a witness, and you could include that as part of your evidence package, and that could either mean something to people or not. So it's and it's going to be interesting because there's guys like Mark Alpiger. Is that her name? His name? Piger?
You're close.
Is it Piger? I don't know. So if he was talking about on his site, like being a referee for hire, basically. He basically says that he has a lot of credibility as someone who will scrutinize a performance. So if you want to send a videotape to him or have him appear live with you and verify, he can be part of your evidence package that goes into Twin Galaxies. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it could create opportunities for people. If there is someone who the community thinks is actually a really good witness, and it matters if they've seen something or not, well, that could create opportunity for that person to even make money, because if you want to pay him to come to your house and stand there, because you know that will help people believe that what you're doing to do with Twin Galaxies, it's not, but it could create a cottage industry of experts that volunteer, proof that they're more to the evidence package. I don't know if that will work, but that's one of the ideas I've seen floating out there. Right? So, and there's also one last thing I want to bring up, which is there was a whole discussion about private submissions, and people were making arguments for and against private submissions under the old Twin Galaxy system. And for those people who are watching, what I'm referring to is some people will have an arcade machine and they'll play a bunch, like like Zookeeper, for example. People will develop techniques on an arcade machine after thousands and thousands of hours of play. They'll discover little nuanced things, and they'll put up a really big score. So they've invested heavily into the technique that they have. And if they're forced to send a videotape into a public forum, they know that other players of that game will watch their technique and duplicate it and potentially be able to challenge their score with the technique they developed. And they don't want to show their performance for that reason. They don't want people to get, to what they slaved for 1,000 hours to figure out. They don't want to just give that up. So historically, Twin Galaxies used to have private submissions where only a single referee would watch the tape. It wouldn't be public. The referee would say that's a legit score, and then it would go up, but no one else would see the technique. So in a public adjudication system, they'd have to show their video, and everybody would have to see it. And so you got players who were saying, I don't want to do that, and they were arguing the merits of private, because they were saying, look, if we don't submit, then you're not going to have the best players who submitted because you won't get to see the performances. And then there were people arguing the public, saying, no, if you want public recognition of how great you are, then show what you have in public. I mean, the NFL, if you're on the NFL, you can develop all your strategies privately, practice privately all day long, but when it comes to game day, you're going to do your technique on the field in front of absolutely everybody. So the argument goes back and forth and back and forth. And, obviously in the new Twin Galaxy system, you don't have to submit a video if you don't want to, right? But one of the things that I thought was really interesting that was never brought up, and it was this fact. When arcade machines were initially created, they were for public places. So if you were going to play a video game, a Pac-Man, it was in a public spot. Now, of course, you could, if you were wealthy enough at the time, you could buy your own arcade machine and bring it home and develop techniques. The argument that never got brought up was, if you allow private submissions, because people can afford to have their own arcade machine at home, you're essentially, potentially giving wealthy people a leg up over people who aren't wealthy enough to have their own machine to compete at that same level, because they can't buy a machine and bring it home. So whether or not, so private performances would be a privilege of the more fortunate. And does Twin Galaxies want to reward or create a system that favors the more fortunate versus the less fortunate. That actually never got brought up in the conversation. I thought that was interesting. But I wanted to throw that out there just as, now that the point is completely moot, but to me, it's an interesting thing to think about, because was it ever the intention for these arcade machines to be sitting inside people's homes so that they can privately develop, and compete against someone who has to compete out in public? It's just a question that's being thrown out there.
Excellent. So really what people need to be doing for this next month is they need to be getting themselves verified, right? Right, Jace?
Oh, yeah.
So for the next month?
You should get verified if you aren't on Twin Galaxies. It's really important so that you can participate. It doesn't cost you anything. Don't lie on your verification form. Just be honest who you are. Twin Galaxies is never going to sell or give out your information. Not doing it. Not interested in doing that. Don't need to do it. It's the reason that we need your information is because we all need to know that we're dealing with each other as real people. And if you're going to theoretically be recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records, it needs to be your name, not Mr. X. And since everybody would be giving their name, and you can know that Twin Galaxies has contact information for everybody, it helps to mitigate behavior, because there's no anonymousness. Everybody's responsible for who they are in the system. And you also know that the people who are judging your performance are actually real people and not bots or anything else. That's why. Pinky swear, Vundo, pinky swear.
So do it.
Oh,
Get verified so you can be ready January 1st.
So have I answered all of the burning questions out there, or is there anything else? Anything from Twin Galaxies past? Anything from the acquiring of Twin Galaxies? Anything? Is there anything you want to know? Because
got to remember that no punk bastard ever. Classic.
Look at that. I want the community to understand that I am willing to answer questions. When is my birthday? I was born in 16,000 BC when the first video game was made with rocks. And we would throw them at each other.
Phil Tudos had a good question.
What was the question?
He says, so just to clarify, MAME scores will be accepted as long as the IMP file isn't the first and only piece of evidence.
No, that's not true. You could submit a MAME score however you want.
Love it.
So I'm just saying you should provide as much information as you can and not just rely on an IMP score only, an IMP file, but you can if you want to. That's totally fine. I can tell you, no, I'll keep that as a secret. There's more cool stuff coming up that as relates to emulation, because I think there are things Twin Galaxies can do to create some more stability and conformity in how to rate emulated stuff. But the database already has emulation in it for certain platforms and for certain versions. But just know that that's something that I'm looking at, and that I see a lot of really good solutions. It's going to cost me a lot of money to solve this, but there's some good solutions moving forward for emulation in general, and that Twin Galaxies is going to be helping to simplify and level that realm, so competitiveness can occur there a little bit more than it does now. I think that we can bring a little more security into the situation. I think we can bring a little bit more fairness into the situation on emulation in general.
Excellent. Another question from the chat. This is an old time. I used to sign them for people. In the future, of course, because you got a lot of things on your plate, will Twin Galaxies be issuing certificates?
Yes.
Okay, there's your answer.
Yes, Twin Galaxies will be issuing certificates, and there will be other things that will become available that it's Twin Galaxies brand related that can only be earned and not purchased. So get your credibility up, hold some records, hold some positions, There'll be some cool stuff, but absolutely, certificates are coming back. I had the original stamp that Roy Schilt gave to Walter. So I have that. What I did was I took that, I had it duplicated because it was starting to wear. It didn't make a full stamp. I had a new stamp created of the original stuff. I've placed in a frame the old one with a letter from Walter. So the original one is framed, and then I have the new one, which is a direct copy of the original, that it's all pristine and it presses hard, and it really creates the right imprint for the certificates.
Got to remember, but no punk bastard ever. I love Roy. He's me mate.
Roy, and this is for Roy. When we get all through all this other stuff, I am going to look at, just like every other issue, the Missile Command score issue.
Oh my God.
I'm going to go right to the fundamentals of it. I think Roy's core argument is that the settings are not individually tracked in the database. I tend to agree that is an issue. You have a bunch of scores all grouped together, whether it's fast or slow settings. There's no way to break those out away from each other because you don't know how they were set. There's nothing you can do about that. That's just you don't know. However, going forward, having a distinction between the settings, I think, is important. So, but I'll look at it in great detail. I'll even talk with him about it and all this other stuff. But I want this whole database from front to back to be super credible and for it to make logical sense. I'm not coming at it in some sort of subjective, emotional way. And it looks like I have 36 seconds left before this goes off.
Thank you, Jace, for kind of basically doing the I forgot the name of the show already. But settle on the screen, and that's what you've done tonight. And we appreciate it, and we're really excited come next year, hopefully, if everything goes as well, to announce those world records and promote those gamers on this show, interview them, talk about the scores. It's going to be great. Thank you, Jay, so much for coming on the show tonight. Appreciate all your hard work. And like I said, you're a saint to the video game community.
I got to go. I've got 2 seconds. Bye.
See you next. Stay around. Bye.